In this demonstration, we're going to explore how to sculpt an eye onto a desired surface. There are many tools and resources that can be very useful in this exercise. One is a flat wooden tool with a rounded end. Another is a smaller wooden tool that imitates the finger but allows for more precise control. A wooden tool similar to the last, but with a more sharp curve that allows for greater detail in tight areas. A wooden needle tool is also useful, with a slight curve that allows for greater detail in tight areas. A double-ended metal tool with a rounded edge and also a flat edge are good for carving. A rubber tool is good for refining, with a pointed edge that's bended, and also a flat edge that's good for shaping and also smoothing. Two more useful tools would be rubber ribs or metal ribs with a jagged edge that's good for scoring and a smooth edge that's good for smoothing out the piece. A squirt bottle is useful for scoring as well as smoothing the piece and keeping it moist and working with. Resources, such as a skull or drawings, can help you look at the bone structure. You're also going to need some clay, some soft clay that's easily moved, and also some harder clay that's easily formed and shaped. Step 1. Establishing a surface. For many of you may already have a surface. You might be building off of a head that you've created, or you might just be wanting to create an eye. So for this exercise, we're going to use a slab, about 1/2 inch thick, and we're going to start building off of that and also compressing it. Step 2, building up the form. We're going to start building up the bone structure around the eye so that we have a better idea about where things are on our clay surface. So we're going to start taking some of our wetter clay and compressing it onto our slab surface. What we want to do is look back and forth at the skull or our resources on paper and try and replicate what we see. Try and pay attention to highs and lows in the bone structure. Work quickly because remember that you can always change things. Keep adding clay and building up the structure. It'll be rough at first. Make sure that you compress. Compression is very important, otherwise the piece will fall apart. So I'm just adding clay, creating the forehead now, building up where the eyebrow bone will be. I'm smoothing and compressing and pinching. Within the center of the eye, you can compress also, creating more of a deeper pocket for where the eyeball will lay. I like to use my pointer finger to do this, because I have more control. I press that in a little bit too far, so I'm just going to take another clump of clay and compress it on there to build up that eyebrow bone. I'm going to take some clay and build up the cheekbone now. Because if you take a look at the skull or your references, you'll notice that that cheekbone there kind of sticks out. It's a little bit higher than the rest of the front of the face there. So I'm going to add some clay. Remember to look back and forth. It's very important to look at your reference and then look at your piece. Alright, so I'm thinking that looks pretty good. Still some more adjustments to make though. Just keep adjusting and refining, look it back and forth. Just going to add some more here, continue to build up that surface. Right now I'm compressing, and I'm making that temporal lobe there. Step 3, developing the eyeball. So I'm going to take a chunk of this dryer clay and just squeeze it into a ball. Then I'm going to take that ball and hold it up to my eye socket that I've created and kind of judge how much I need to take off. So I think this is a little big, so I'm going to start just squeezing with my 2 fingers, taking off pieces and making sure that I continually compress so I don't form any air bubbles. Hold it up again, it's still a little big, so I'm going to do that step again and just kind of pinch off some excess clay. And remove that clay and then kind of round it out again. Sometimes I like to roll it on the table, it gets a better shape. Alright, so I'm going to take my excess clay, don't waste, and put it back on the pile. Round out the eyeball again. And then I'm going to hold it up to the piece again. See how it fits in there. Alright, I think that's looking pretty good. It's a good size. Alright, so I'm going to take that back out. And then I'm going to kind of refine the iris and the pupil, which is step 4. I'm going to use my metal sculpting tool and kind of decipher where I think the iris edge will lie. I'm just going to kind of compress that area. And then I'm going to take my wooden rounded tool and just kind of compress a little bit deeper, a little bit firmer into the eyeball. And there are many different ways that you can do this. This is just one technique. In classical sculpture, you'll notice that the eyeballs are rarely defined, just kind of a shape underneath the eyelid. So I'm gonna smooth that out a little bit with the tip of my thumb. I'm gonna take my carving tool again. I'm just gonna take some of that material out. So I want this to look dark, like it's colored. So I'm going to take a little bit more of that material out, compress. Now as you're working with those tools, you're going to learn ways that you like to work with them, things that you think work best. And smooth that out a little bit more. I'm going to take my wooden needle tool and kind of get the edges of the iris. Make those just a little bit deeper and a little bit darker. And also the pupil of the eye. Alright, so I have the eyeball and I'm going to fit it in there, see how it looks, see how it fits. It looks pretty good. I'm liking it. Alright, step 5, attaching the eyeball. So what you're going to do is take your metal rib tool and scrape the back of the eyeball. You're also going to scrape your surface, and this way you can slip and score the 2 pieces together. Alright, step 6, developing the eyelid and under eye. So I'm going to take a slab of the harder clay and I'm going to use my knife and cut it into a kind of rectangular shape. So I'm going to cut off the ends. Now it's almost kind of triangular shaped, but with flat ends. So I'm gonna finish cutting this. And then what I'm gonna do is hold it up to my product so far. So I'm gonna take this over here and just kind of lay it on top of the piece. See what it looks like. Try and figure out where I'm gonna want things. Making sure I pay attention to the bone structure. Alright, so this end is a little bit rough, so I want to flatten this out so it's nice and smooth like the end of your eyelid. So I'm just going to compress it with my 2 fingers. Sometimes I can use the table, makes it a little bit more even. And it's still a little bit rough. So I'm going to go to this image over here that I have of the muscles and kind of see where it lays over the bone structure and around the eye. I also have some drawn images where I can see kind of how the eyelid falls, when the eye's closed, when it's open, even a profile. For this exercise I'm going to do an open eye. So I kind of, after smoothed it out, laid it on top where I wanted it to go. And then I'm just kind of going to compress it onto that bone structure that I have. Going to compress it on all sides. And this is only the first layer of the eyelid, so don't be too worried about how it looks so far. Remember, you can refine all the time. Just continue to refine, refine, refine. Alright, so next just take a look at your scrap pile and see if there's a shape pretty similar to the first one that you had before. If there's nothing in your scrap pile, just make another slab and cut it in about the same shape as the first time. Lay it on your piece, see how it fits, and then flatten out that eyelid just the same way you did the first part. Make sure it kind of comes to a point wherever it's going to lay on the eye. You want it to be nice and smooth. Keep compressing, and make sure you don't compress so far that it's such a thin piece that when you actually put it on it, it's going to fall apart. Right, this is a little bit rough. I'm not really liking how that's looking, but I don't want to get rid of this, so I'm going to use a squirt bottle and I'm going to kind of smooth this out a little bit and make it a little bit more of an even surface. Alright, so after I did that, I'm going to lay it on the eye here, kind of bend it a little bit to however I want, and if it starts to crack on the bottom there like that, just don't worry about it. You're going to smooth it out, compress, compress. I'm just going to kind of work my way around the eye, being really gentle when I get close to the edges. And also just kind of smoothing it out. And always pay attention to what you see on your resources, on your models. Alright, so now I'm going to do the upper lid. That extra skin that kind of falls over that bottom part of the upper lid. So I'm going to compress this down, just like we have these last two times. Make it smooth and then kind of find out where I think it fits best. Alright, so I'm going to pay attention to that upper brow bone. I want to make sure that's a little bit higher, but it also kind of goes at a slant downward, so I don't want it to be built up too far. I have to pay attention to all bone structure in all different areas so that I can make it work together. So I'm going to cut this down a little bit, and scrape your knife on the edge of the table if you need to, get rid of that extra clay. Cut that down a little bit. I'm going to find where it fits perfectly, bend it around. I'm going to angle that upward a little bit and then go downward a little bit. And this is where your image resources can come in handy, because you can see where that bend happens. I'm going to smooth out the corners. Alright, so now take some of your moister clay, just a little chunk. And this is going to be used to kind of build up that lower part of the cheek that goes right under the eye. So in our image here, you can kind of see those creases that happen when the lower eye gets a little bit more raised, a little bit puffier. Alright, so I'm going to take this here, kind of the pointed end, and go in towards that inner corner of the eye. Now I think I'm going to overlap just a little bit so that I have some place to compress that on there. Alright, and then I'm just going to press down and smooth that out. Now this probably is going to take a few layers. You're not going to be able to do it all in one shot. So I'm going to smooth that out. And then I'm going to go back over to my moist clay and get another chunk to fill in that area right there. So I'm going to go over here and get some more, and this piece is a little big, so I'm just going to take a little chunk off of it. I'm going to kind of compress that in that corner there where I feel like it's a little too deep. Kind of let it ride off the bridge of the nose there. Just smooth that out a little bit. Alright, so this is starting to look a little bit better here. See that volume, that crease that's starting to happen? We're going to go back in later with the tool and kind of refine that crease. I'm going to push up a little bit here. Remember, there are all different ways that you can move the clay. Alright, so next I'm going to kind of go in with a tool, the rounded wooden knife tool, and I'm going to compress to refine those creases a little bit in the under eye. I'm going to kind of move in a downward angle. Now I don't just want to stab it, I want to move the clay. So I'm going to move it downward. I can use my finger to smooth out those imperfections. I'm gonna just refine some more. Always be refining. Refining is the key. Scrape off some of that extra clay. Alright, then I'm going to go over here to look at this profile view. And look how that line directly under the eyelid kind of falls. If I go from the side view on my piece, I don't quite have that yet, so I want to kind of refine that crease that falls right under the eyelid there. And with this, I'm just getting a really light pressure to just kind of refine that line, scraping away some of that excess clay. And then I'm going to start refining a little bit more. And using my finger to kind of smooth that out. You can also use the squirt bottle to kind of soften those creases a little bit. So, step 7, refine and refine again. We're going to look at the corners of the eye there, and we're going to use our wooden needle tool to refine those curves and make them look exactly how I want them to look. I'm going to go downward a little bit here on this inside part of the eye. And then on the outside, I'm going to go straight out, but still a little bit downward, and go back to my resource and kind of look how it overlaps that bottom eyelid. So you take the top part and just kind of bring it over so that it looks like that bottom line is falling underneath there. So I'm going to take the needle and push it outward just like that. Pull that clay outward. Now I'm not jabbing into the clay, just kind of moving the clay along with the tip of the needle. You can also use your fingers to make sure it's nice and smooth. And then just anywhere you see that needs to be built up a little bit or compressed a little bit, just to refine the bone structure around the eye, the eyelids, anything you feel like needs to be fixed up a little bit, just work on that. Look at your resources, back and forth, just decide what you feel like needs to be fixed or refined. And I'm just going to kind of finish this off cut off the edges, and here we go. We have one clay eye. I hope you enjoyed this demonstration and feel one step closer to sculpting a portrait in clay.